I was actually second choice. Actually, Will Eisner was brought into it first, which I think would have been really interesting. But Will suggested I do it. And then the person who was packaging it came to me. I met with the owners of not the estate. The estate reverted back to the family, but earlier on, I decided that I was going to try certain things, and they said, "Look, your work is sort of the comic book equivalent of Jimi Hendrix," which I felt was very, very nice to hear, but I sort of felt, that wasn't the case at all. But when I started to try to do some of the things that I felt Jimmy would have done, or I was trying to do things artistically that pushed it, I was met with a lot of resistance, So I look at the Hendrix book as an interesting failure. I mean, it's pretty, but they wanted everything painted. And I said, look, Jimmy was using the fuzz box. And this is like, I said, let's try some digital stuff. Let's play with this a little bit. And if we're going to try to go for Jimmy's essence, let's try to do something that says what Jimmy might have done. And I ended up getting into so many. I had to literally pick and choose my arguments in terms of what I was trying to accomplish.
But at the same time, it's like, and we've had this conversation many times. I think it's one of the greatest graphic novels that's ever been produced, and there's very little that I compliment that highly. But Bill cannot separate it from the battles he went through in working on the project, and
I
thinking
can see what it could have been.
That's interesting there, because we don't see that. Like it's interesting how the creator sees that.
You can't separate it.
The people who are just seeing it.
That's part of your life experience.
Right.
So you can't separate the doing of the work from the final product. But where the audience sees it, it is Jimi Hendrix, and it's the closest thing in graphic novel we have, not only to telling the story of his life, but actually trying to interpret his style into a graphic style.
That's a good point. I try to discipline myself about how open I was about that kind of stuff early on, because if someone brings you a book to sign,
they have their translation.
Yeah,
they have their interpretation.
They love this book.
Their
experience. They give me this cover, and if you go, that guy never paid me for that cover. Like, you don't want to destroy their experience.
And then they walk around, this thing I've loved and cherished, it's now spoiled.
I've actually seen some really, incredible professionals whose work I love go like, I'm not signing it. I don't like that, I'm not signing it. But that's fine for you. But these people are your fans, and you should just sign it and don't destroy their experience.
Yeah, I think they want to know, they might want to know a little bit of the story, but they want to know sort of the as opposed to a negative story. I mean, I remember there was
we're only scheduled in here for a couple more minutes, and as this is an innovative, edgy panel, we will not be having time for questions from the audience. But we're all in the dealer's room, right together, and you're welcome to come over and continue the conversation.
Any questions you have, feel welcome to
come on over. You can follow us right over. We're over there. We're here all weekend, 4 shows a day.
So yeah,
but those are the 3 books that I passed out lately. If you could pass those forward, it'd be nice.
No, I just I sort of think of the danger of meeting people that you've respected and admired. I remember hearing Tommy Lasorda talking about people that I've met like Mickey Mantle and people like that. And they remember them as amazing ball players, but then you have an experience with them where they kind of go they reveal their human frailties and their other aspects that may be a little bit more human in a way that you might not want to remember.
Well, yeah. But you sort of also realize, in this business, we all have stuff. Everybody in this business is probably in it because their mind is just distorted and schizophrenic enough to make them an awesome comic book writer and artist. You have just enough questionable social problems to be good at what you do. So you give them a certain, you go, okay, I got my problems too. But the flip side of that is when you meet somebody and they're just genuinely good-hearted people, as well as great artists and communicators.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I mean, as far as I certainly feel like that's the case with my colleagues here on the panel. But also, you talk about artists. coming back to Baron's story. It's like, and, you know, and I again, having lived in Westport and was fortunate enough to meet a lot of wonderful artists and writers. Bernie Fuchs, just amazingly wonderful human being. But Baron is one of the most amazingly influential artists I've ever met, but also one of the most generous in terms of his love for what the other artists do, and in terms of a cheerleader. And it's just an amazing thing when you find someone who's inspiring and also very generous in that way. You can't ask for more than that in terms of humanity, but in terms of an artist field where we tend to be much more isolated, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's really easy for the work to, you know, anything that's beyond the realm of the fluorescent lights sort of drifts off into this nebulous non-world, and everything that is on the drawing table can be become second guessed and triple guessed, and all levels of insecurity can kind of creep in. And when you meet someone who says, you know, I understand that, and I think what you did here, it's like one of the wonderful things about this is that we maybe have lack of social skills in a lot of respects, but in terms of generosity of spirit and sort of, you can really separate the people who are there for the generous aspect of cheerleading, and then the ones who sort of think their stuff is sort of all that. We all know who those might be.
That's your interesting point. The people who are often like the most powerful at what they do and the most, you know, great at the diversity of jumping from one thing to the other, and they don't really feel like they have something to prove. They tend to be the most humble and the most giving, and
that's really true.
Willing to give you good advice, you know, and you can sense that about them, that they appreciate the work they're doing and they're trying to do the best work they can do, and they'll might ask for your advice on that, and they're happy to help you do the best work you do.
Right.
Whereas other people, you almost feel like there's some kind of, they think it's a competitive game. Like what we're doing, it's not a competitive game.
No,
this isn't like, you can't make a pie chart of this. Like you would, like with, you know, company, you know, this has this much of the market. That's not how we're, you know, if we're doing our jobs correctly, we're bringing our own brand new pie chart to the table. We're not taking someone else's piece of the pie.
Right.
You know?
Very, very true. Yeah. So it's you know, and again, like David and I have had these kind of conversations, and I think in some respects, you know, having you all sort of be, and it's sort of almost a philosophy as opposed to not simply a way of drawing or painting, because in some respects the technical aspects of it are they're just an element that help you kind of connect, and if we connect at all to what you're, you know, with the audience and people who are responding, it's a dialogue, and maybe because things have become much more instantaneous, we get a lot more responses much more quickly, whereas in years past, I mean, we would be doing something, then on to something else, and then the issue that we worked on 3 months earlier finally came out, and we'd get responses to it. We'd be meanwhile, we'd be like, you know, 6 months ahead. So
it's about time to wrap up, but I want to say, aren't you guys working on a Daredevil project together?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell us just a little bit about that before we leave?
Okay, it's kind of like our love letter to the Daredevil mythos in a way. It's I'm co-writing it with Brian Bendis, and I'm doing some art spots on it, but the majority of the artwork is done by Bill Sienkiewicz and Klaus Janson, you know, from Miller and Janson. Daredevils, they're doing some fantastic stuff.
Klaus is just amazing. I'm really enjoying it. But I'm also going to be doing some individual
just about every Daredevil character is in the story, and so there's moments where we kind of reflect the styles of the different Daredevil eras. And with all the people who are involved on it, Alex Maleev is doing some work, you know, I'll be doing some art, and in between, like, Bill painting some stuff, Bill drawing with Janson inking some stuff, Janson drawing with Bill inking some stuff, you know, between all these different people, we can make like 10 different cool Daredevil styles.
Well, look,
you know?
I got a request. I got a personal request, all right? I'm a big Wally Wood guy, okay? Well, Wood was as important to Daredevil as anybody ever was.
And brought their red suit in.
And so, you know, look for ways you can squeeze a little, you know, if it's a billboard or something, you know, better drawings are drawn by Wood.
I agree. I mean, I was
huge
lover of Wally's
little,
stuff. So,
little
yeah.
tip of the hat that are obvious little,